In any given year, Hamilton Conservation Authority returns to the community $3 worth of watershed management and environmental protection programs and initiatives for every tax dollar invested. Here are a few highlights of the important environmental work the Authority brought to the watershed residents during the past 12 months.
I'd like to take this opportunity to share with you some of the highlights for the Hamilton-Halton Watershed Stewardship Program in 2008. This spring, the stewardship program offered a rural pond stewardship workshop for landowners. The purpose of the workshop was to be able to provide landowners with information and tools to be able to properly manage the ponds on their property to improve water quality and habitat associated with the ponds. The workshops were very successful. Our staff were busy with site visits. After the workshop, landowners were interested in having us come out and talk with them more about the things that they had learned at the workshop. In the fall of this year, we held a wetland workshop for landowners, and it too was well attended. And again, partners in the community came together to present topics that would be of interest to landowners around managing their activities when they own wetland on their property. These workshops help landowners understand how they can improve water quality and habitat on their properties, and that contributes to the health of the watershed. In addition to the workshops, one-on-one on-site consultations are available to landowners from our staff, and the purpose of those consultations is to help landowners see ways in which they could improve water quality or habitat on their properties. 2009 marks the 15th year of the Hamilton-Halton Watershed Stewardship Program, and we look forward to continuing our work with the community in 2009.
The Spencer Creek Stewardship Action Plans are just one of the Hamilton Conservation Authority's contributing projects to the Hamilton Harbor Remedial Action Plan. There are 4 major creek systems that drain into Cootes Paradise and ultimately the Hamilton Harbor. Spencer Creek is one of those 4 creeks, and it contributes 57% of all flow going into Cootes Paradise. The Spencer Creek watershed is broken up into 15 smaller catchment basins, and they're called subwatersheds. At the end of 5 years, we will have stewardship action plans for each of those 15 subwatersheds. They are detailed descriptions of all of the natural features in each of the subwatersheds. The stewardship action plans identify environmental stresses within the watersheds. Many of the issues identified and solutions presented come from local residents and business owners through public consultation and open houses. We have a team of partners working together to implement the recommendations coming out of these plans, and it capitalizes on our potential as a collective to affect change on the landscape. The development of the plans will be completed in 2011, but we're anticipating that the implementation of the plans will carry on well into 2015.
In addition to my regular duties as the watershed officer with the Hamilton Conservation Authority, which includes reviewing regulation applications, conducting site visits, issuing permits, and enforcing the regulation generally. In 2008, we started delivering erosion and sediment control workshops, mainly targeted at Hamilton-Halton Home Builders Association, general contractors, and landscape contractors. And we're continuing with those workshops into 2009. The main purpose of the workshops, back in 2006, an erosion and sediment control guideline for urban construction sites was developed by conservation authorities, provincial ministries, and municipalities to essentially serve as a guideline document for contractors involved in construction projects throughout the Greater Golden Horseshoe area. Conservation in Halton and ourselves are working together in putting together these workshops, which is essentially taking the guideline document and getting the information out there to the people on the ground. Another project we're hoping to get off the ground is a monitoring and research project for sediment and erosion control, whereby we're hoping to hire a couple of staff people for a year-long project who will sort of more regularly and intensively monitor active construction sites, predominantly in the Hamilton Harbor, Cootes Paradise watershed. I mean, the workshops are designed to get the information out to the public and to the contractors who are working on the ground to increase awareness about sediment and erosion control issues and try to be proactive rather than always as an enforcement capacity being reactive to things that are happening on the ground.
The Conservation Authority was involved in a number of important environmental projects in 2008. One of the biggest projects we worked on was the Gypsy Moth Control Project. Gypsy moths are an invasive species. Their larvae feast on the leaves of deciduous trees, and over time, eventually they will kill the tree, which is a very big concern for us with the overall health of our forests on our natural areas. In 2008 specifically, we had called for an aerial spraying for gypsy moths using a biological pesticide called BTK. We sprayed only on Hamilton Conservation Authority lands. This program was undertaken in conjunction with the City of Hamilton in order for them to spray some of their affected lands as well. In late fall and in the winter, we also do egg mass counts to get an estimate on how many potential larvae we could have in the spring, and then use that as an estimate to determine how much defoliation of these trees will happen as a result. One of the other measures we've taken is using pheromone traps. Basically, these traps attract the male gypsy moths to them. They release a scent, which is typically released from the female to attract males to reproduce with them. And in doing so, it reduces the number of male gypsy moths in the overall population. An integral part of this process was public consultation. A number of meetings were held across the city in order for us to get input from the public and to inform them of the process during the whole gypsy moth control program. Based on egg mass surveys that we did in fall 2008, we found that the gypsy moth population has relatively crashed across our properties at least, and that we're not anticipating any problems in 2009. Invasive species will continue to be a problem that the Conservation Authority deals with into the future. Eventually, the Conservation Authority will be undertaking other programs to monitor the emerald ash borer, which is currently starting to make its way further north in Ontario. Another important project that we worked on in 2008 was the construction of 4 deer exclosures, 3 that are in the Dundas Valley and 1 at Iroquois Heights Conservation Area. A deer exclosure is a 4 meter by 4 meter fenced in structure which keeps deer out. It keeps them from feeding on the vegetation, it keeps them from trampling the vegetation, and over time we can monitor the changes in the vegetation communities within the exclosure and compare it to the vegetation community outside of the exclosure to see the effect that the deer have on those communities. One of the most important environmental projects in the ecology program is our biomonitoring, specifically our aquatic resource monitoring program. The purpose of this program is to monitor the health of our streams and the quality of our water within our watersheds. The first component of the aquatic resource monitoring program is the benthic monitoring. Benthic monitoring is basically looking at the insects and organisms that live within the bottom of the stream. By monitoring these organisms, we can determine the effects of water quality over time on the health of the ecosystem. The next component of the program is the fish monitoring. Fish are monitored in our streams by using a technique called electrofishing. We use 2 types of electrofishing. One is backpack electrofishing for streams and boat electrofishing for lakes. And this allows us to monitor fish populations as well as assess the health of their populations over time. The third component of this program is the monitoring of fish habitat. With chemical water quality testing, you can see the immediate impacts that an environmental problem has on a watershed, whereas with biological monitoring, it allows you to monitor long-term cumulative impacts and changes that environmental problems will have on those watersheds over time.
HCA has an established reputation as a proven ecology-based conservation organization specializing in watershed management. Regardless of evolving challenges, we will always be proactive and collaborative as we continually seek ways to protect our natural heritage and honor our grassroots legacy of working with the community to ensure the environmental health of the watershed for the benefit of all.